Hi everyone, this is Laura Costa from Newstex, and today I'm here with this amazing guest, Mitchell Beer from the Energy Mix. Hi Mitchell, how are you?
I'm great, thank you, Laura. Thanks so much for having me on.
No, thank you so much for being here with us today and teaching us a little bit about you, your publication, your experience, and your career in this amazing industry. And yeah, hopefully, some of our publishers watching this will learn from you.
And in turn, if there's ever any chance to learn from other publishers in the Newtex network, we're all about that.
Thank you, Mitchell. So, do you want to let us know who is Mitchell Beer a little bit?
Well, thanks. I'm the publisher of the Energy Mix, which is a nonprofit community news site and a series of e-digests on climate change, energy, and the shift off carbon. We currently publish 4 different digests per week. We're on our way to 5. And we just recently celebrated our 10th anniversary in operation. I see you're at your 20th. I hear the first 20 years are the toughest. So congratulations. If
Congrats.
you told me 10 years ago that we'd be celebrating 10 years, I would have thought that was either the funniest thing or the scariest thing, but here we are. So,
Here you are. Congratulations on that achievement.
and
And
to you.
yeah, and hopefully we'll see way more from now on from the energy mix. Like this is just getting started. Well, Mitchell, I would like to start with one of these questions to get to know you as a publisher, and what was your first writing job and how did that job influence the rest of this amazing career you've had?
Well, for most practical purposes, my first job as a journalist was at a newspaper called Canadian Renewable Energy News. We produced our first edition on Halloween 1977, so we're coming up on an anniversary. And the paper actually survived until about 1984. And I was on staff or freelance for about half of that time until early 1982. It was just an honor of a lifetime to get to spend that time digging in and learning so much about 30 or 40 different separate, distinct renewable energy and energy efficiency technologies, processes, the economics behind them, the politics behind them. And I came out of there, you asked what influence it had on my career. I have not been able to stay in the renewable energy space all my life, but coming
Mhm.
out of those 3.5 years, I knew what I was built to do. I knew what I was supposed to be doing. Um, and then first became involved in reporting on climate change in 1997.
Wow.
And then I really knew what I was built to do. So um, I've been in and out of this space ever since.
I love that. So you felt the flame inside you, the flame
Well,
of writing, informing, educating.
it's a feeling of, I mean, by the time climate change came along, I can remember at the time we were working as conference publishing consultant, and I walked into that room not knowing the difference between climate change and the hole in the ozone layer. And I
Okay.
came out basically promising our 3-year-old at the time, and she's 30 this year, that we would keep at it till we were done. And I know so many people in this work who have a similar story. Um,
Okay.
and at some point, you generalize that out and say,
Right.
sure, of course, you're doing it for the people you love, you're doing it for the people close to you. And at some point, we're all of us doing this for all of us together because it's an area where, as we were talking about before you started to record, this is an area where we know what to do. We know the
Right.
solutions. We know that they are practical, they're affordable, they're ready for prime time. And we only get it done if we all pitch in at whatever we can do, wherever we are situated, whatever our job is, whatever kind of access we have to a
Right.
particular kind of climate solution. We get it done when we all of us have that same focus on we're going to do what we can. And it goes beyond, I'm going to change out my light bulbs at home and I'll do my recycling and okay, fine,
Yeah.
composting is gross, but you're telling me it makes a difference, so I'll do it. That stuff matters, but what really matters is what we can deploy in the work we do, in the
Right.
networks we're in the positions of influence, whatever position of influence we have. And at the
Right.
Energy Mix, we have oriented our stories and organized our different news digests to try to help those specific audiences have more
Wow.
impact driving faster, deeper carbon cuts.
That's incredible. I mean, I can feel the passion when you speak about it. Um, and I was going to ask next, what is the purpose of your publication? But I'm guessing that is the purpose of the publication, right?
Basically, just covered that. Yeah, I mean, we um what we think we can do is deploy the best practices of journalism
Mhm.
to drive what journalism thinks of as an advocacy purpose. And for anybody who went to journalism school, I just said something that's somewhere between weird and sacrilegious. Okay. Um, in journalism, you learn you're taking one step back. You are not doing advocacy. Even in the solutions journalism community,
Yeah,
there's a really important and legitimate conversation about how far can we go before this isn't journalism anymore. So at the Energy
right.
Mix, our mission statement is not some variant on all the news that's fit to print. We're not here to build a news empire.
Okay.
We expect to work ourselves out of a job by 2035 because if a climate publication like ours is still needed by then, we have a bigger problem. Our mission statement is something much closer to faster, deeper carbon cuts, but we're not advocacy. The expertise that we bring, the subject specialty that we
Hmm,
focus on, that decides our storyline up.
of
And
course.
once we go out to start telling the story, it's hardcore journalism right down the line. We do the research, we conduct the interviews, we gather the evidence, we take it where we follow it where it leads, we tell the story without fear or favor.
Yeah,
And if that happens to look bad for a particular renewable energy or energy storage or efficiency project, we think we make the community stronger to whatever extent the story we write helps others because we all have to do this together, set a standard for the quality that everybody has a right to expect from this
definitely.
community. So at one point, we've written, you'll probably cut this out because it'll be too long, but we've written 3 or 4 stories on lithium ion battery fires.
Yeah,
And if I can say that so earnestly, you know I need to get out more. But it's not battery fire is not a deal breaker. Internal
mhm,
combustion cars catch fire a lot more often than electric vehicles, proportionate to how many are on the road.
yeah,
But a lithium ion fire is serious. It's toxic. Firefighters now know better than they used to how to put them out. But it's an issue. And it doesn't stop the deployment of electric vehicles. It doesn't stop battery development, but it's a legit story.
yeah.
And so we've run 3 or 4 of them over the last maybe 2 or 3 years. And at one
Wow.
point, we had a note in our comment section that said, "What are you doing writing about all these battery fires? We thought you were pro renewables." Yeah, we want this transition to happen. We have devoted our lives to making it happen, pretty much doing our
Definitely.
part to help make it happen. And in what universe does anything work properly if there's no scrutiny, if there's no rigor, if there's no following the evidence where it leads? And
Definitely.
that's what journalism does. So damn right we're journalists, just in a different kind of, in a somewhat different model at a time when journalism is changing massively. So we're learning as we go, but pretty confident in what we're doing.
Thank you, Mitchell. I just have to thank you now because, thank you for be doing this, amazing, high quality, trustworthy journalism that we can all
Well,
learn and educate from. So thank you for
well,
that.
well, well, thank you for that. But honestly, I come, I mean, I come to this from just a position of gratitude every single day that I actually get to do this. I was more out of the space than in for almost 3 decades. And any publisher in the Newstex network, if you've been through first year journalism school, you know that we shouldn't, or at least I professionally shouldn't be allowed to do what I've done because I was in the profession
Of
for
course.
various reasons that are an even longer winded story. I ended up having to move out. And it was drilled into us in first and second year, and I still carry it right here. if you leave the profession, you can't come back, you're dead to us, because who will ever believe that you'll, sort of tell a straight story if you've done PR? And
Right.
as I say, I carry that around every single day. So people started calling us journalists after the first couple of years of the energy mix. And I
Yeah.
would just sort of smile and change the subject, and my heart would die a little bit more. But as I've been saying now, over time, it took me a long time to figure it out. I think others on our team knew this before I did,
Yeah.
but damn right, we're journalists. We just happen to have a certain area of expertise, and we're not
Yeah.
going to change beats every 5 years so that we don't get too biased. We're going to stay in this beat until the job's done and get the story right
I
without
love
fear or
that.
favor. That's that. But people ask me, why don't you retire? Why would I? I have the best job in the world, and I'm so lucky,
I love
so
that.
lucky, and so grateful every single day. The news isn't always good.
No, of
Obviously, we
course,
work on
of
climate change.
course.
I would still rather be doing this than anything else.
I love that. Thank you. And we can notice by the results, what everything that you put out there, every article is insane. So if any publisher doesn't know what we're talking about, I truly invite you to go and check the energy mix and, the work that you've done here, because it is insane. Thank you
And
so
the
much.
URL I think you're looking for is theenergymix.com.
Theenergymix.com. Thank you, Mitchell. Okay,
I kind of
so
have it memorized.
I mean, you
You
should. And well, I want a little bit of, your wisdom. So can you let us know what is the worst decision you've made so far and what can we learn from it?
that's the toughest question in this interview,
Yeah.
right? I think probably, yeah, it is a tough question. Not What I would like to say is that the worst mistake that we've made in the 10 years publishing, um, is that it's taken us so long to realize um, that the best solutions to climate change are outside the bubble of those of us who are already working on climate change every day. And those
Right.
decisions are probably going to be made for reasons that are secondarily about climate and primarily about what people are already trying to achieve.
Okay.
Okay, so and there's so many examples of this, but for example, if we know that right across North America and way beyond, we're in a desperate affordable housing crisis.
Hmm.
And if you think of a household that is just routinely having to choose between food and fuel because they can't afford both, and now the rent's going up again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go to that family and say, so how come you aren't getting with the program on home insulation and weather stripping? Don't you care about climate change? The
Hmm.
correct answer to that is get out of my life. I never want to talk to you again.
Exactly.
And even if the pitch to that family is, hey, look, there's this tax credit,
Hmm.
that means they have to finance it for 6 or 8 months until the tax credit comes in. And
Hmm.
meanwhile, they're choosing between food and fuel. If the storyline is, we're going to make this home more comfortable to live in, it'll be healthier because it'll be less drafty, it won't be overheated in winter, and it's being paid for up front. And there's a project manager that will handle all the contracting and all of the organization and the logistics around a construction project. You won't even have to leave your home because we're doing it from the outside in.
Right.
And in the end, you won't be choosing between food and fuel anymore
Yeah.
because you're not paying for fuel. Your energy bill is down to about 10 or 20 bucks a month instead of the hundreds that it might have been before. Okay.
Exactly.
That turns the story on its head. And the key point is that I've just described a climate story. I've just described a climate change message and solution without using any of our standard C words like climate and crisis and carbon, which means it actually makes sense to somebody who didn't already wake up this morning thinking about climate change. And the mistake I really regret
Right.
is, I mean, we're still learning how to do this, but it took us way too long to get on that track. And I think it's, first of all, the solution that we all need, just as citizens and practitioners to get to the solutions we need. And for our own publishing practice, our own professional practice, it really guides which stories we select, how we orient the different news digests in our inventory to
Yeah.
address specific audiences that can have a disproportionate impact on climate change. We have a cities and communities digest. We have a utilities digest. We're
Yeah.
working to launch a community climate finance digest. But it took us way too long to get around to that. And we don't have time to waste on climate change. We're going to get it done, but we're right down to the final deadline. And so I wish we had sorted that out a lot faster and learned how to articulate. As you can tell, we still need to learn how to put it into an elevator pitch unless this is a 200-story building. But I wish we'd understood that sooner.
Right. Well, I can get that. It was a hard one, but this is pretty insightful.
Well, thanks. But we needed to get there sooner, and we could
Yeah.
have covered more ground faster if we had. So
Well, now you are there. So, thank you for sharing. I've learned so much so far.
thank
So
you.
thanks,
That's really
Joe.
kind. Thanks.
Well, let me see what other questions do I have for you. I want, like your opinion on the industry right now, in this publishing industry. What do you think are the current challenges that the industry is facing these days?
Well, just the same things that that we're all of us facing in publishing. That there is no business model.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I think it's better than it was 5 and 10 years ago, but we're all of us, trying to figure out where the revenue comes from, trying to figure out what are the ethics around different revenue streams.
Right.
At the extreme, and certainly in the climate space, there are publications out there that are just getting shamelessly funded by the fossil fuel industry and maybe kind of sort of disclosing that in fine print or not disclosing it at all, versus being more upfront about how you fund yourself, however you go about it, and then knowing that that's going to trigger some tough conversations with funders, potentially with readers, potentially with critics, saying, so how can we believe you if that's the way you're funded? Well, the first piece of that is we've just disclosed it so that you could ask us that question, so that we can have that conversation. And here's how we protect the operation. I think it's useful to make the point that traditional journalism, as some of us remember it, was
Right.
in no way pure. When I was in journalism school, we learned about Lord Thompson of Fleet, who was I believe in the House of Lords in the UK, if I remember correctly, who owned an inordinate number of Canadian newspapers circa the 1970s, 80s. And his attitude about news was that its only purpose was that it was the stuff you put between the advertising.
Yeah.
So nobody will convince me. I mean, people in the Thompson chain were well trained and they knew what they needed to do and they tried to keep it independent. No one will convince me that management never had influence in Thompson or anywhere else. So this has always been an issue in journalism.
Right.
It's tougher now because traditional revenue models have blown up. We're being pressed by disinformation, pressed by misinformation, all of that augmented by AI.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's everywhere. I can't even begin to imagine, what you're all going through in the United States. When misinformation can take the form, of these
Completely.
claims that the January 6th insurrection, was sort of a, wonderful people having a picnic on Capitol Hill. Tell that to the families of the police officers who were murdered by those terrorists. And yet you're in this working environment where everything is subject to question, nothing is trusted. And very often journalists are threatened or worse for doing their job. So all of us face all of that. Nobody said it was going to be easy, but it's tough right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what is going to happen, because definitely we need some change, right? So
And we built that. one step at a time. We built
Exactly.
that by building trust. We built that by, building trusting relationships with funders that will give us the wherewithal to build
Definitely.
trusting relationships with readers and communities. One thing that
Definitely.
I saw recently that really gave me hope and maybe possibly a pathway for sort of stabilizing and valuing one of the aspects of news that has really been lost lately.
Mhm.
We covered a UCLA study about 3 or 4 months ago,
Right.
where they found that public support for and interest in infrastructure projects really
Mm.
increased when it was reported by local news.
Okay.
And sort of through our lens, this wasn't specifically about green infrastructure. Obviously, I'm curious to know how it applies to anything that's about climate solutions. But the
Right.
storyline, they didn't phrase it this way, but the way I would frame it is that if you're sitting, making it up as I go along here, if you're sitting in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and you hear that the administration is putting $7.3 billion into some new piece of the Inflation Reduction Act or the infrastructure bill, your
Mm.
reaction often is going to be, oh, okay, their hands in my pocket again. However, if you're sitting in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and the story is we're getting 1.2 million or $500,000 for this pedestrian bridge that will mean that we can cut our daily commute by half an hour each way each day. We can walk instead of driving. It's easier, it's safer, it's really pleasant because I always loved that body of water that the bridge goes over. I could just never get there because I never had time because I was so busy driving to and from work. And by the way, it'll have a bike lane. So my daughter will be safe getting to and from school and won't have to inhale diesel fumes on a school bus that hasn't been electrified yet. So
Yeah.
that $500,000 is going to be a hell of a lot more compelling to somebody than the big picture dollar amount that the White House publishes. But
Yeah.
where are the local media to tell that story? They've all been trashed and hollowed out. So the bad news is they've all been trashed and hollowed out. The good news is there's a really obvious solution there. And it's not just to get locally focused infrastructure reporting, it's the importance we bring as a profession, as an industry, to building and sustaining community. And
Right.
I don't mean any of that as PR fluff.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
The
yeah.
story, the story
Definitely.
might just as well be that damn bridge was such a great idea, but the tender was corrupt. Local media tells that story as well,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's
definitely.
right. But localizing it is something that's been lost.
Yeah.
Identifying the fact that it's been lost is the first step in getting it back. And getting that back is maybe the first step, one of the first steps in getting our
Right.
communities back and getting back the family members and loved ones who've fallen down that rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and won't
Mhm.
talk about anything else because there are so many millions of people who are hurting about that now. And right, like they've lost people they love, you know.
Yeah.
Most of us have at least one or two. So it's hopeful to me that it's amazing to me that an academic study would focus on local news, which is where so many of us started or wanted to,
Exactly.
as part of the solution to these really big challenges. That
Yeah.
recognition is all of everything.
Yeah, it's like it was, there was like this era when everything was just like go global, and now
Yeah,
communities and society is
yeah,
asking to come back local.
yeah. I mean, when I was in journalism school, too long ago now,
Yeah.
what we learned was local always um, outweighs national, national always outweighs international. And I can so clearly remember thinking, oh, yeah, yeah, our generation's going to be different because international dynamics, international issues do matter. And I think it's a really good, it makes it a lot more challenging, but I think it's better than not that we do have access to all this international news. We can, see in a heartbeat what's going on around the world. It's really important. And we've lost so much by losing local news. And I don't think it has to be either or.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
And once again, if we've identified this problem,
Right.
well, let's go down. Let's get on with it. Let's do something about it.
Definitely. Definitely. I like the way you think, Mitchell. I've enjoyed really much this conversation today, so thank you. And I
My
think that,
pleasure.
our publishers, some of them are also going to be like, feeling identified with what you're saying or saying like, oh my God, yeah, I've never thought of that. So thank you. It's been
It's a
really
pleasure.
insightful.
We are always happy to talk with colleagues, counterparts in the industry. We are always
Yeah,
actively looking for content partnerships. And by that, I don't mean necessarily income back for a content partnership. Our goal, our fundamental
yeah.
purpose is to get news people can use in the hands of people who can use it. So if there's any, I mean, people have access to our content through Newstex. So, we're happy to assist in any way that we can, and just to talk shop, including with people who disagree. If somebody's heard something
Totally.
in this interview and they say, "Oh, come on, that's bullshit," I'd like to hear that. Because we have to be constantly testing ourselves and testing each other.
Definitely, definitely. Well, Mitchell, before I let you go, and you just mentioned that you like this way of distributing your content, but can you tell me why did you decide to partner with us with Newstex? Like, was there something that caught your attention, or just
To
because it
be
was like another channel to
to be
distribute?
honest, the one thing that we're looking for is that wider reach.
Yeah,
It's nice to receive a revenue report once a month, but it's really our goal is to get the news out as far and wide as we can, to the
definitely.
extent that um, it's of secondary importance to us whether somebody ever finds their way to our news site. If they find a story that they can pick up and run with and do something with, and actually achieve something in their community and show themselves and everybody else that they can, that
Yeah,
results in faster, deeper
it's
carbon cuts
worth
that
it.
leave no one behind. I don't care if they even know if we exist.
Okay.
Seriously,
Yeah,
as long as they see that story. I mentioned that we're a nonprofit. Um, we'd like to be able to measure that impact.
of
And
course.
having said, oh, it's okay, they don't need to know who we are, that suddenly makes it harder to measure, right? And so, our
Right.
interest in being with Newstex is that if it opens our content out to a wider community, to a wider set of audiences, we'd love to have numbers back on, how many stories are landing where, but the important thing is that they get out and that we know that that's happening.
Okay. Get it. Thank you. Thank you, Mitchell. We love having you here, and we are working on new channels, new stuff. So we are coming, stronger as well to help you reach even wider audiences. So thank you for
We
being a
so
part of
appreciate that.
this Newstex
Yeah.
family. And yeah, well, thank you for being here today and separating this time, taking this time to be with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Mitchell. I'll let you go now.
Okay. Thanks, Laura.
Bye-bye.
Bye.